Hi everyone, today I have a quick art journaling video and I start by making some focal images for my journal page. And I'm using the new Sketchy Leaves #4 stencils, and I wondered if I could kind of stamp with them. I have a layer of acrylic paint already on the masks because I used them on my jelly plate. And this is a little bit more rough than the original plastic of the stencil. So I thought it might be good for distress inks so that they adhere well to the stencil. So I inked up the stencil, then spritzed it with water, and now I'm pressing it onto the Canson mixed media paper. It's a bit of an experiment if this works or if it doesn't, and I also recognize that it needs a lot of ink, especially when you're working on a paper background. Maybe it would be good to work on a craft surface, so then when you have inked up your stencil, you can use the remaining ink on your surface and create a background or whatever on another piece of paper, just to not waste your ink. I think this turned out quite lovely, and I will make some more, so I have a few images to use on my page. And the colors I'm using is the Peacock feathers and the rusty Hinge, because they work perfectly together. They mix a nice green when they touch each other, and they work also harmonious in one if they are sitting next to each other, because they are kind of complementary. I'm giving the ink some time to grab onto the paper, and it's also a little bit hard to remove that mask from the paper without messing up the print. This one is a bit too light. I feel it was not enough ink or maybe not enough water. I'm going in with a brush and I just paint the areas where it's too light. And this is what I mean. You should use a craft surface, then use the remaining ink for some backgrounds or whatever. Maybe I will do this next time. I would definitely try out more color combinations with the distress inks on the stencil, because I really like the images that I got here. While my images are drying, I'm going to start my art journal page, and I'm working in one of my handmade pocket chunky art journals. I thought instead of making a collage background, what I quite often do, I decided to use acrylic paints for the background today. And here the green I'm using is from Amsterdam, the light olive green. It looks different on camera. It looks like a poison green, but it is a light olive. It's quite more yellowish compared to what you can see here. I hope the photos will catch the right color in the end. I'm applying the paint with my fingers just randomly. I'm making kind of a mess today, and yeah. In my next step, I think I'm going to pick my white heavy gesso, yes, and I plan to apply this with a palette knife, so I get a different texture compared to what I get when I apply it with my finger. And I just lighten up the page with this gesso. Of course, you can also use some white acrylic paint instead. I have quite a thick layer of paint on the spread now, and I will let this dry for a while. I don't like to heat set or heat dry acrylic paint because it tends to bubble if it gets too hot with the heat gun. And I also like to have some time in between. So I have a different view when I come back to the page. And what I decided to do is I will add a little bit of collage because I really needed some textured contrast, I feel, against this acrylic painterly background. And I picked a collage paper that I made on an old book page, and I stamped an image from one of our pencil mark sets with acrylic paint onto it. And I really like that texture as a contrast against the background, and I think it matches the whole spread perfectly. And I think this is also a nice technique to explore or to try out in different color combos. So just throw down some acrylic paint and then add some contrasting collage papers and finish it up with a little bit of mark making or background stamping and add a focal image. It's kind of a recipe for an art journal page, and especially when you want to create something and maybe you are not really inspired and you don't know what to do, it's always good to have kind of a recipe on hand, what you can do and the steps you can take. And often just the process of creating leads to inspiration and gives you new ideas. Now, as I had a look on my page, I felt that the left side with the pattern is a little bit too much of a pattern. So I wanted to bring something that matches my page background. And here I have just a leftover paint paper. And there is also some burnt sienna on it. And this color matches my main images. So I decided to pick a little bit of that. So I have also something of that warm color from my main images on the background. And the rusty hinge is almost like a burnt sienna, I feel. Maybe it's a little bit lighter than on my collage paper here, but that doesn't matter, I think. And I think that matches perfectly. I'm adhering all the papers as always with a glue stick, and I'm using the Tombow glue stick. As the book is a little bit bulky, I try to press the paper down very good so it does not come off my page. I'm thinking about bringing that burnt sienna color also to the other side of my spread so that everything looks cohesive in the end. And this time I cut out a shape instead of tearing the paper. I often like to have both kind of papers on my page because it's just a little bit different and brings in more interest. I will now add some background stamping also to my spread. And here I'm using a stamp from our Mixed Media Marks #1 stamp set. And it's just some script, and I thought it matches that page layout very good. To stamp in that bulky book, I laid a piece of foam underneath my page to make it more even because it's very bulky and thick, and as every page has a different size, it's even more complicated to stamp. Unfortunately, I messed that stamping up, and I also don't like it in this area. But that does not matter because I just can add a piece of collage paper on top and I won't see it. So I'm going to search for some green paper that matches my background. I picked some greenish pieces from my stash and adhered them to the spread. And you can tell that I did it because of that ugly stamped image. I'm having a look where I exactly want to place my main images, and I also will check if it needs something else on the page. And what I decide to do is I'm going to make some marks with a Neocolor crayon in that turquoisey color that my focal images have. This turquoise is not on the background, and I wanted to have it on the background so everything fits nicely together. And so I picked a turquoise crayon and I'm just making some marks. I really like the end result, and what I'm going to do now is I will adhere the images with some wet glue, and I'm just checking if the other looks better. And I will leave you with some photos of the finished spread. I will have also some close-up images over on my website, and I will give you a link in the video description. I wish you a lovely weekend, and I hope you will see us next time. Bye.